Hi everyone, it's Konrad Bobilak here, CEO of Investors Prime Real Estate and author of Australian Property Finance Made Simple. Today's video is more about psychology than anything else. You know, a lot of the YouTube videos that I've been making for this channel have to do with specific things that are happening in the economy right now, whether it's to do with labour policies or liberal policies or investment strategies. Specifically things like negative gearing, cash flow analysis, which areas to focus on, which areas to avoid, all those kind of things. What I wanted to do now is do a bit of a different video about psychology and mindset, because I think, 80% of success ultimately is psychology, 20% is specialized knowledge, which is the stuff you've got to implement. But you're not going to implement anything unless you have the psychology which enables you to implement stuff. And this is what the rich people know and what the middle class and the poor people in Australia, poor's probably a bad word, I would say middle class and lower middle class, because we haven't really got a poor class. If we do, they're not listening to YouTube or buying properties. But let's say middle working class don't appreciate and get it wrong all the time. And I want to talk about this because it's so important. And you would have seen other videos where I talk about there's 4 things you need to do in order to become successful in property investing. Number 1 thing is you've got to cultivate an investor's psychology. So work out what other people that are successful, what do they think, what are their belief habits, what are their paradigms, and then copy them without getting any creativity at all. Because if there's a bunch of people that are getting massive results in building massive property portfolios and they've got something in common and they have never met each other, let me tell you, success leaves clues. So you've just got to find out what it is they think, what's the belief systems they hold, and how do I replicate them in order to get the same results? Because virtually everyone's the same. And the perfect analogy is if you ever join a gym, you can put on muscles very quickly, providing you stick to a very structured routine and a very structured meal plan. And a lot of people just get it wrong because they rely on their intuition or misinformation. And a lot of times your intuition is proven wrong, especially when it comes to the world of investing. So this video is made for those people who want to get a bit of a glimpse on what is it that successful property investors really think about. What's the belief systems about the market and cycles, and when to invest, when to stay out of the market. So welcome to today's video. Before we proceed, a bit of a personal disclaimer. Like with the gym membership, there is no guarantee you're going to get any results by listening to anything that I say. You've got to put in the hard work, and the only person that's responsible for making you wealthy is you. That's right. No one's going to make you wealthy, especially financial planners, especially those financial planners that work for AMP. So if you don't know what they've done, Google it. Why should you listen to me? Well, I've got a bunch of certificates behind my name. I'm actually a real estate agent currently working in St Kilda, specialising in focusing on the best possible growth areas in Melbourne and sourcing properties for private clients. My background is also mortgage broking, residential and commercial, and asset finance. I worked for NAB and a company called Medfin, and also I started off my career in financial planning with Australian Uni Funds Management, and I was working with unlisted property trusts, life insurance, income protection insurance, all that kind of stuff. The most important thing about myself is that I'm actually a real property investor in the market doing things of right now. I'm not an academic, I'm not a guy that's a theorist, I'm actually a private investor. And this is one of the principles that I always encourage people to stick to. Your number 1 rule of success is find someone that's successful currently and then copy what they do exactly to the letter. And this is the same thing with anything, whether it's building wealth, whether it's building up your body, whether it's building up strength or becoming really good at a sport. Everything has a learning curve, and the way you can actually get through the learning curve, either you can do it yourself and take forever, or you can get someone to help you and fast track that learning curve. And that's why, I've got so many mentors in my life, both for powerlifting, which I've been doing for over 22 years, and also my personal development, my psychology, mindset, and also investing. So the more mentors you get, the more coaches you get in your life who have deserved the credibility and earned the credibility, I should say, as a coach, then you're going to get through the learning curve a lot faster than someone just doing everything from scratch or reading books or trying to get information on the internet. pardon me, I've got a slight virus. Being mid-2019 in Melbourne, the weather is absolutely miserable at the moment out there. In fact, it's the coldest day today in the whole year. So everyone's a bit sick in Melbourne. Anyway, this is a copy of my book. Not a copy of my book, but this is the website you can go to get a copy of my book, which is Book on Finance, or any good bookshop or Amazon or eBay. Let's talk about psychology, the herd mentality. The biggest thing I believe in is if everyone's doing something, I do the exact opposite. Because everyone in Australia ends up dead broke at 65. Asset rich, one house paid off, with about 160 grand in the superannuation fund for a male and about 130 for a female. So I know that the reality is if the majority of people are doing the same thing, which is go to school, get a good job, work their job for 30 or 40 years, put money into your super fund, and then you retire with virtually one house paid off, but no ability to get equity out of the house, and really your house doesn't really improve your quality of life because you've got expenses. Cash flow is king, as they say, which is very true in retiring because, yes, you've got the house, it's paid off, but so what? You still got to maintain the house. The house will still cost you at least 1 to 2% per year in taxes, fees, and maintenance and upkeeping. But then you've got to live. You know, you've got to live. And people these days are living longer and longer because of technology and medicine. You know, in the 70s and the 60s, you retire at 65, 67, you're dead pretty much. You know. They find you dead on the back veranda, and that's it. You know, 2 years, that's fine. Now, I'm in the gym in the morning at 8 o'clock. There's guys that are 60, 70 pumping iron every morning. They're taking freaking NutriBullets. they're taking protein. I mean, these guys are people are living 30 years now after retirement. Think about that for a second. How are you going to sustain your life for 20 or 30 years after you retire at 65? And remember, at 65, it is very difficult to get lending in Australia because of life expectancy tables. So you know, life expectancy tables change every year. And these are tables that work out an algorithm that works out how long you're going to live for, depending on the day that you were born. Now, life insurance companies use these tables to price life insurance, which is death cover. So they're quite accurate. Yes, there are always, you know, exceptions. You can have genetic predispositions to die earlier or actually outlive those tables, as many people do. But, you know, if insurance companies are writing their business on the back of these life insurance life expectancy tables, they're pretty accurate. And what they're telling us is people are living longer and longer because they're looking after themselves, they're eating better quality food, they're doing more exercise. I mean, look at the volume of gyms that have opened up in the last 10 years around Australia. I remember when I was doing powerlifting, and I'm 42, when I started doing powerlifting at 18, 19, there was like 4 gyms in Melbourne. There was Doherty's gym, you know, in Brunswick. There was a gym in the city, and there was Mike's gym in Dandenong, a couple of others, you know, in Thomastown, and that's it. Like there's no gyms around, right? And there was no personal trainers. There was some guy somewhere that you heard of. There was an Olympic weightlifter, and he's doing personal training, but you can't get a hold of him. Now it's like McDonald's. I mean, you look at the variety of 24-hour gyms that have opened up in Melbourne and Sydney. It's literally every street, every corner. They're as common as McDonald's. And because of that, we've got a whole new generation of people starting out using gyms sooner than before, and then you know, using them indefinitely. I remember when I was about 21, I was at Australian Uni, just got my job at Australian Uni Funds Management, 114 Albert Road. I was doing powerlifting and I was supplementing with protein. Now, this is over 20 years ago. Just some of you will laugh about this, but I remember I was having a protein shake during a break, and this woman asked me, "What's that?" I said, "It's protein." And she said, "Is that like medicine? Do you have some kind of a condition?" I said, "No, it's made to recover your muscles faster." "Oh, really? Do you have to take that every day?" "Where do you get it from?" It was just a bizarre conversation I had with someone who had no idea what protein was, you know. Now, obviously, you can get protein at Safeway and Coles and every supermarket selling it. It's as mainstream as anything. Now, because of that, people are living longer and longer. But look where we're ending up financially. While we're getting stronger and physically fitter, because of quality of food and lifestyle choices, financially, I mean, people are worse off, I think, than 20 years ago, because life is so expensive now in Melbourne and Sydney, and people want to have cars, and we've got access to more information, we want to travel, we want to do stuff. I remember when I was doing my diploma of financial planning, and you should aim for, theoretically, when you retire, you should aim for about 80% of your income that you were deriving during your working career. I reckon that's bullshit. You should be aiming for 200% of your income, because this is a time where you want to party. Your kids have gone, you know, they're independent, you're there by yourself, you got the house paid off. This is the time where you want to have 6 holidays per year. You're not working anymore. What do you want to do? You want to go out all the time. And this is where you need a lot of money to sustain a good lifestyle. So look where the majority of people are ending up. They're ending up dead broke at 65. So the opposite is really, you look at what they're doing and then do the exact opposite. I mean, I would recommend actually interviewing 10 people and just saying, okay, let me ask you something. So you grew up in the best country in the world, you had a really good paying job, and you're 65 now, you're dead broke, you've got 60 grand in your super and 1 house paid off. Let me ask you what you did exactly to get to that position, because then I'm going to do the exact opposite. You know, and by definition, the opposite is most people never invest in property or the stock market. They never get educated, and they always put things off because it's in a too hard basket. So we're going to break that pattern. I'm going to share with you on this video, what is it that wealthy people really believe, and what is it that the majority of people do, even if they are investing? And this is the herd mentality. Now, you know, at the moment, we're kind of at the bottom of the property cycle. We're kind of here at the moment somewhere. We've just turned a corner theoretically, but we haven't got enough data to really, excuse me, substantiate that 100%. But I can see there's a slight recovery coming around the corner. I don't think this cycle, this bottom part of the cycle will last very long. I think there'll be a recovery by the end of 2019, early 2020. But you can see there, at the peak of the market, everyone's an investor. Everyone that you know is a developer. Everyone's buying blocks of land off the plan, whether they have the intention of settling it or no. And now there's hundreds of thousands of blocks of land being sold on Gumtree and eBay by people that have secured them using deposits, and some of them have used credit cards as deposits. I mean, I know taxi drivers that have bought blocks of land in Truganina, Tarneit, Point Cook, South Morang, you know, Packet and Berwick, Craigieburn, Caroline Springs. Now they can't sell them, they can't settle them because no one wants them. So this is a form of a gambler, by the way. This is not really a true investor, because you wouldn't do that in the first place. But when everything's going well, everyone's an expert, everyone's doing everything right, everyone's making money, right? But what investors know is that there's more money made at the bottom of the market than there is at the peak of the market. There's no talent required for you to make money at the peak of the market, because everything you own is just going to go up in value, whether you've bought it correctly or not. You know, and this is the issue. The problem with people is they buy a house in the middle of nowhere and it goes up by 100 grand, and they go, "Oh, that's a lot of money. I'll do that again." But can they do it again? That's the question. How many times can you replicate that process over an extended period of time? Eventually, at the peak of the market, there's euphoria. People just go, "My God, this is so good. I want to do more of this. I'm an expert. I'm unbeatable. I should have bought 5. In fact, I'll buy 5 now." And the majority of people end up buying at the peak of the market, and then we go into the next property cycle. Unease, denial. Then we become pessimistic. Oh, shit, I shouldn't have bought those 5 blocks. Can't even settle them. What do I want to do? I know, I'll offload them. Well, it's not only you offloading them, it's the other thousands of people that did the same thing. Then there's panic and despair at the bottom when you're selling things and losing money. Now, this is where smart investors go in. Between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock on the property clock, this is where smart developers are buying development sites from banks with full DA approved, so development approval and building approval, but they're buying it cheaper than the original house was being bought for on the original block. This is where investors are buying from people that are bought up here, but now they can't settle because they can't get finance. And this is where they're taking over specific properties based on independent due diligence and research. So majority of investors that are smart buy at the bottom of the market, and what they do at the peak of the market, they don't buy at the peak of the market, they actually refinance all their properties and lock in the lines of credit at the peak of the market. So what I do at the peak of the market is so remember, when you're valuing a property, those references the valuers need to determine the value of your property are only valid for 60 to 90 days, and then the markets change. So you've only got a small window of opportunity where you can increase your lines of credit aggressively or your redraw facilities on your properties. So, and remember, there's only so many things you can do in the year that enables you to do things financially before your credit scoring and your credit file is smashed completely. Because every time you refinance a property or buy a property or do a personal loan, your credit file is getting marked. So there's only so much traffic you can have as an investor on your credit file before no one will give you any money because there's too much traffic. So you've got to be very wary about that. You've got to really pick your battles correctly. And it's about spending time on the specific activity that gives you the highest return on your money. And this is what wealthy people understand, is there are certain activities that give you a massive return on your time, and there are other activities that don't give you a massive return on your time. So at the peak of the market, 2017, which is the last peak, 2016-17, I didn't buy any property. I actually refinanced a lot of my properties and locked in my lines of credit. Now those properties have diminished theoretically by at least 10%. And I reckon some of them would have gone down by, if I had to get them valued today, I mean, I've got houses that are worth 1.7. I reckon if I had to get it revalued today, it would be 1.5. So that means that there's $200,000 less in equity that I've got from 2017 in 2019. Now, because I've locked in my line of credit to peak, and I knew it was the peak because we were at 12 o'clock on the property clock, so all my energy was spent on getting lines of credit. Now I'm buying properties up from people that have bought at the peak, and I'm getting them at a discount with low stamp duty and rebates either from developers or discounted properties from private buyers. So I do the exact opposite of what people are doing. When they are buying at the peak of the market, I refinance, revalue my properties. When they're selling, and being very discerning, I choose and pick which properties to buy and get discounts on those properties. So it's called counter-cyclical investing, doing the exact polar opposite of what majority of people are doing. Remember, the vast majority of people get it wrong. They end up dead broke, they're unhappy, most people hate what they do for work, and they live a life of quiet desperation. I'm not even kidding you. The amount of clients that I have that just hate their work, they're in IT, they're a dentist, they're making good money, and they've got responsibilities, but that's not their calling. They're not here, you know. If you want to know what you were supposed to do, think back when you were a child, 6 and 7. You know, if someone asks you, what do you want to do? I want to be an archaeologist. I want to go to the moon. I want to be a race car driver. And what happens later on, you get conditioned by society. That's unrealistic. You can't be a race car driver. You can't be an archaeologist. You can't go to the moon. You've got to be an accountant. You've got to be doing auditing for, you know, PricewaterhouseCoopers. No one at 6 says, I want to be an auditor, accountant for PricewaterhouseCoopers when I grow up. No one wants that job, you know, like that doesn't happen. I remember in 2018, GFC came, all the Armageddon doomers and gloomers, the Harry Dents, Stephen Kings, all the experts were coming out saying, the market's going to crash. It's crashed in the US, Australian market's going to crash. You guys will see. There was so much almost rejoicement, people rejoicing in the fact the market's going to crash. I was speaking at a lot of conferences in 2008, 2009, which was 10 years ago now, telling people, guys, this is the time to buy real estate. This is at the bottom of the last cycle. And I was saying St Kilda, Elwood, Williamstown, Port Melbourne, Albert Park, Hawthorne, Canterbury. Guys, these areas are undervalued. You know, the intrinsic value is there, but they've just been devalued because of negative consumer sentiment, uncertainty. Auction clearance rates are down. Vendor discounting is record high. Get into these areas. Start buying these properties. Now, the ones that did, bang, they made money. Guess what? Most people never bought during the GFC. When did they buy? They bought at the peak of the last cycle, or 2017, which was the next cycle. And this is what vast majority of people are doing. So you can even tell when you go to a barbecue. You go to a barbecue now, everyone's negative about property. Oh yeah, we don't know what's going to happen. You know, the royal inquiry, the banking system, no one can get lending, all these bullshit excuses, right? 2017, everyone was an expert developer and doing subdivisions, right? Everyone that you know in your life was a developer or thinking of developing something. Now, where are they? They're all gone. The big boys are still around. They're doing developments, but the mum and dad developers have shelved all the projects. Do the opposite. You know when the time is to get developments? Right now is the time to buy development sites from banks that have fallen over and the banks are repossessing them, and that's where you get your margins. That's when instead of 25% margin or 30% margin, you can make 40, 50% margins on your development. It's all a question of being either a person who's positive or negative. You know, and this is the reality of the situation. Events are going to occur indefinitely. For the next 50 years, there's going to be uncertainty. There's going to be uncertainty in terms of politics, in terms of the economy, in terms of interest rates, the banking and financial services sector. All these things will continue to happen. There's going to be recessions, depressions, there's going to be wars, there's going to be conflict. It's never going to change. That's human nature. You know, it's always going to happen. The reality is you get to make a choice when that does happen. And you get to make a choice between whether you're a person that sees this glass half full or half empty. Because ultimately, you're going to be, and I just tell people, drink the water and don't question it. Make the best out of every situation. But you've got a choice. You're going to either respond or react. Now remember, 5% of people that are the investors respond. They take advantage of prevailing circumstances and they use them accordingly, which is at the peak of the market, they refinance all their properties. At the bottom of the market, they buy them. Or you can react, which is the majority of people, be blown around like a paper bag in the wind, taken to wherever you're supposed to go. And they're the people that you know, a lot of people say, oh, well, that happened for a reason. No, you created that reason. There's no such thing as, you know, people say ignorance is bliss. I'll tell you now, ignorance will send you to the poorhouse. Ignorance is not bliss, you know. You think, and this is the crazy thing about what I see. I'll tell you the craziest thing that I've ever seen in terms of human behaviour. People buying brand new $30,000 Commodores or Camrys, and then they drive them out from the dealership and they're worth $10,000 less, and then a year later they're worth half. But they won't spend $5,000 on Anthony Robbins or Robert Kiyosaki or go to the US and educate themselves, you know, in the US or Europe, and then spend time educating themselves on mindset and psychology or investing strategies, or do a course on property investing or the stock market. Because they say, oh, it's $5,000. That's so much money. Compared to what? Compared to being ignorant all your life and then waking up at 65 realizing it's too late? If you think education is expensive, try ignorance. That's expensive. You know, whatever money you're going to earn for the rest of your life, you're going to always blow that money because your living expenses, your lifestyle will catch up very quickly to your income. Doesn't matter if you're on $30,000, $300,000, $3 million. Your lifestyle will catch up without the right psychology, you know. Because I know people that can save money on 30 or 40 grand per year. I know people that can't save money on 150 grand a year living from paycheck to paycheck. It comes down to psychology and behavior and developing certain habits. But I can tell you now, the craziest thing I see people buying $35,000 brand new cars, brand new Camry, yet they won't spend 5 grand per year on the personal development. Why wouldn't you just buy a 3-year-old Camry and then save the 10 grand and use the 10 grand to travel around the world educating yourself, or take 6 months off work or 3 months of work and read 100 books on a particular topic? Like, the dumbest thing is to just buy a brand new car, which is what everyone's doing. Everyone's buying Camrys and Commodores. No one cares about Camrys and Commodores. No one goes, wow, that's a brand new white Camry. No one gives a shit if it's a year old or 2 years old or 6 months old, right? No one goes, is that the new four-cylinder Camry? Wow, that's amazing. You know, and this is why, personally, I drive an AMG Mercedes-Benz today, which is worth about 300,000 plus. But I can tell you now, when I was 18, 19, in my 20s, I always had shit cars, 5, 6, 7 grand. My friends were buying brand new cars, getting all these leases in place, and I was spending that money on personal development and traveling and educating myself. And I've never regretted that. You know, and this is the thing, I'd rather have the worst car possible, but I invest in my psychology and mindset in order to have the things in the future that those people will never have. And this is the crazy thing. People spend so much money on these cars and they're nothing cars. No one cares about a Camry or a Commodore. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter if it's 2 years old or 1 year old or 6 months old or brand new. It's a Commodore or a Camry. So if you drive a brand new Camry or Commodore and you're not spending 5 grand on personal development, you've got to reassess your behaviour, because I can tell you now, that behaviour, just that behaviour, is keeping you exactly where you are right now. Because think about how many courses you could have done every year. I'm not talking about taking years off your job, because it's not reality. I'm talking about just doing one course per year for $5,000, going to the US and doing a property course, or a course on how to sell things on Amazon, or doing a course on the stock market. You know, there's some brilliant speakers out there, or personal development, you know, with Robert Kiyosaki, or, you know, Tony Robbins, or any of the speakers out there. You know, and this is why these people end up in different buckets. And the thing is, it's your choice at the end of the day. You guys get to choose exactly where you're going to end up. And I used to believe, you know, it's funny, when I did my diploma of financial planning, they talk about market risk. I don't believe there's any market risk at all. Do you know who the risk is? You're the risk. You look in the mirror and you say, I am my worst enemy when it comes to making money, because that's the reality. You know, you're your own worst enemy, because it's about how you spend your time and what you do with your money. And it's not about how much you make. It's about what you do with it. That's the reality. The biggest thing that changed my life was in my 20s, I decided to stop watching TV. Now, this is before digital TV, before Netflix. This is still during dial-up, okay? There was no streaming of anything on the internet, right? And I stopped watching TV. So every night I used to sit there with my wife, watch TV, and then go to sleep, like everyone else. Work, you come home, you have dinner, you're tired, you turn on the idiot box, and then 9:30, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, you go to bed. And I thought, you know what, this isn't getting me where I want to be. And the weekends, I can't do stuff on the weekends. It's always family and always busy. So I thought, what I'll do is I won't watch any TV for 12 months, and instead, between 7:30, 8 o'clock, just after dinner, I'll read for 2 hours every night. When I started doing that, I read a book every 7 to 10 days on average. Now, in the first year, I read 26 books on property. So I read all of Stephen McKnight's books, Jan Summers' books, Margaret Lomas' books, and virtually all of the Kiyosaki. I've read about 7 books by Robert Kiyosaki. So, you know, Rich Dad Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, etc. The following year, I read another 30 books. Within 3 years, I read something like 80 books on real estate and mindset. Yet everyone was watching TV, and there's always TV shows on. There's always stuff on. Hey, I'm a big fan of TV. I like, you know, Sons of Anarchy and Games of Thrones. It's all cool. But doing that and spending my time on personal development rather than watching the idiot box fast-tracked my results far beyond any of my friends. And he may be an expert on property, and he gave me so much more tools that I could use to make money. So it's all about you choosing how you use your time. That's the reality. But one of my favourite quotes of all time is, be fearful when others are greedy, be greedy when others are fearful. Do the exact polar opposite of everyone's doing. Everyone's watching TV, read books. That's the opposite of watching TV, literally. Because remember this, top 1% of Australians who own more wealth than the bottom 70% combined. And I can guarantee you that 1% of Australians, this is according to an independent report, I can tell you now that 1% does completely the opposite of what the 70% of people do. Because 70% of people just sit there, watch TV every night, you know, with MasterChef or Married at First Sight. It's all the same, and just keep watching and watching and watching. And then 12 months later, you can't even recall what the show was about. It hasn't value added to you in any way, shape or form. Oxfam Australia has released a new report revealing wealth inequality is still on the rise in 2018 and getting worse. Of course it's going to be getting worse. There's going to be massive divisions between the classes in Australia. The 2018 report comes as new data shows the wealth divide in Sydney is becoming increasingly pronounced, with doctors and lawyers clustering in neighbourhoods close to central business district, and essential services workers such as police, nurses and teachers being forced to settle in outer suburbs where property is more affordable. As a report by Fairfax Media. The report, which relies on data from Credit Suisse, shows the level of wealth held by the richest 1% of Australians grew by 23% in 2017, up from 22% the year before, while the top 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 70% of Australians combined. Now that's by design, by the way. That's not by accident. These people don't wake up and go, oh, I own all this property, I have a massive stock market portfolio, and I have multiple businesses. How did that all happen? I'll tell you how it happened, because they work from 6 in the morning till midnight every day until they make it happen. I know a lot of these business owners. A lot of my friends are very successful, multi-millionaire business owners, and I can tell you that the hours they put in at the beginning when they're building up the business is incredible. Later on, they automate it all. It shows wealth inequality in Australia has been on the rise over the past 2 decades, with the gulf between the amount of wealth held by the top 1% and the bottom 50 now the greatest at any time over this period. And it is getting more and more profound. See, we've had the biggest middle class in Australia for a long period of time. 70% roughly of Australians are middle class. Now what's happening, and it has to do with real estate ownership, the middle class is shrinking and we're having a divide into upper middle class and wealthy people and lower middle class. And a lot has to do with how you spend your time, money, leverage, and where you buy real estate, and whether you invest in real estate or not invest in real estate. The wealth share held by the top 1% has been growing almost continuously over the past 2 decades, while the wealth share held by the poorest 50% of Australians has been failing almost continuously over the past decades. Why? Because they own just a house and Telstra shares, which go nowhere. Over the decades since the global financial crisis, the wealth of Australian billionaires has increased by almost 140%. And I guarantee you they were spending money at the bottom of the cycle to buy assets that were undervalued. Commercial property, residential property, shares. At a total of 115.4 billion last year. Yet over the same period of time, the average wage of the ordinary Australian has increased by just 36% and the average household wealth grew by 12%. It's not good enough just to have your house as the majority of your wealth. You've got to diversify into other properties and then, if you want to, into the stock market and other vehicles. But as a bare minimum, coming from a property background, buy properties, even in the same suburb that you live in, and maximise gearing and claim maximum depreciation. The richest 1% of Australians continue to own more wealth than the bottom 70% of Australians combined. 1% owns more than 70% combined. While everyday Australians are struggling more and more to get by, the wealthiest groups are growing richer and richer and happier and happier. Real estate ownership is the key determining factor. I know a lot of wealthy people, especially developers and lawyers and accountants. And I'll give you some examples. One of the developers that we worked with 4 years ago, we did a development in Glen Iris. That family's worth about $200 million. And they just keep developing in Melbourne. I can tell you now personally, they're super happy people as well, because people think rich people are not happy. And they've done everything the right way, legally, not broken any rules, just doing developments in prime areas. I know a lot of accounting groups that are owned by accountants who are multi-millionaire property investors, lawyers who've done amazingly well. All these people that are investing and using their time efficiently. And the psychology is very different. This is the common thing. They don't know each other, but yet they do the same thing. And this is what happens is, in the next property cycle, now, if you've missed the boat on this cycle, I mean, this is the time to buy property right now. But you've got to know exactly what to look for. The worst thing to do is to get educated now to work out what to buy now, because you've got to be educated already by this point in time, okay? Otherwise, you're going to be paralysed, not knowing who to listen to. So if you're paralysed currently, and be honest with yourself, you don't need to lie to anyone. I don't really care, ultimately. I'll probably never meet you. I don't really care what you do. I'm just telling you, you've got to be honest with yourself. If you're not taking action right now, doesn't matter how smart you are, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a lawyer, if you're not taking action right now to invest, it simply means you haven't got awareness in that area. That's all it means. Doesn't matter how high your IQ is. If you knew what's happening, if you had the level of awareness, you knew exactly how to look at property and do unbiased due diligence and research, you'd be buying as much as you can. So obviously you haven't cultivated your level of awareness, which means you're going to miss this cycle and you've got the next one to go to. But I can tell you now, what happens right now is the stealth phase. The smart money is going in right now into the property market in Melbourne. People are buying up properties, investors are buying up in key areas, and upgraders are buying second homes they couldn't afford before, but now they can afford them. You know, so people are buying Bayside, eastern suburbs, and they're picking them up. Now, not everyone's buying, because remember, that market's very small. Majority of the public are not investors. Only a small percentage of the people out there are investors. But out of the small percentage of people, they're active right now. They're buying up properties in key areas: St Kilda, Elwood, Blackrock, Bryden, etc. A year or two from now, institutional investors are going to go in. And these are fund managers. They're going to be buying up properties to add to property trusts. I'm sure someone's going to come up with a cryptocurrency trust to buy real estate. It's just a matter of time, and these are where institutional investors, we have clear signals the market's recovering, and we're going from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock on the property clock. Then after that happens and we're going to the next boom, and you're going to see this in the media everywhere. Suddenly, everyone's an expert on property, everyone's making money. You will make money on your house if you own one. It'll go up by 100 grand. There'll be references of other records broken in your suburb. You just feel it. You'll feel it in the market. You'll see it in the media. Then everyone gets in, right? This is where the public gets in. And then the public gets in because of greed, because they want to make money, fear of missing out. And then you're going to have friends that are buying property. You're going to be hearing from other people that are buying property. And you're going to go, shit, I should be one of those people. Why am I not buying property? And it's social proof. And you know what? Let's go in and buy property. And once again, majority of people are going to be buying at the peak of the market. And this is where majority of people bought in Sydney in 2012, made no money to 2017, and it boomed by 22%, Then the market's going to go down, return to normality, and there's going to be denial, despair, and people will sell here. Majority of investors that think they can time the market sell at the bottom of the market, and then they work out their costs, holding costs, acquisition costs, capital gain tax. They break even and lose money on property. So you've got to differentiate. If you're listening to this YouTube video right now, think about which camp do you want to be in. Do you want to be with the smart money, or do you want to be with the public? Because the public, majority of people always get there late. They miss out. They get it wrong. Do what the smart money is doing. Buy properties at a discount. Get there early. I'm a typical male when it comes to shopping. I hate shopping. My wife loves shopping. I try to avoid it at all costs. I avoid it like a teen arena concert. I know it's going to be bad. So when I have to go shopping, and I do have to go shopping, obviously, because I have to buy suits, especially for work and stuff for the gym, I only go shopping twice a year, if that. And normally it's Boxing Day or the day after Boxing Day, and when they had the mid-year sales. And then I go and just buy, when it comes to suits, I actually have them tailored now because of powerlifting. But in the past, I used to just buy 3 or 4 suits, 10 pairs of socks, 4 or 5 shoes, because the style doesn't change. The fundamentals haven't changed, I'll buy probably 6 or 7 shirts, all discounted, but good brands, because they don't change. It's the same thing with the property market right now. Brighton, Elwood, Port Melbourne, Williamstown, Yarraville, those areas, Essendon, they haven't changed. They're the same people, same income demographics, same suburbs with the same schools, transport, life factors, but they've just discounted at the moment. So it's crazy that people will line up for the end of year sales, but they won't buy property at a discount. This is the time to buy. I mean, this is it. So be aware of this curve. Be aware of this is what's happening in the market. This will continue to play out every property cycle, and it's just a question of, are you going to get the knowledge to beat the cycle and do the opposite of what everyone's doing, or are you going to be following the cycle and doing what everyone's doing, which is getting virtually no results? So if you've enjoyed this quick video, what's the next step? Well, the next step is obviously to cultivate your level of awareness in property investing, if you like, and increase your level of awareness so you can make informed decisions based on your strategy and your risk profile. So I'd like to invite you to my next real estate investing fast track weekend, which I'm running in Melbourne. I run a few of these per year. They do book out very quickly because I run them right here in my St Kilda office, and there's only 40 seats on the bus on Sunday, and there's only 50 seats that we have in our seminar room right here just behind me. These are 2 days where you get educated about the property market right now, where to buy, where to not to buy, what type of properties to buy. But more importantly, it's generic information about how to structure, build a large property portfolio from scratch. And you can take that methodology, apply it to every major capital city in Australia. Day 1 is purely finance and structuring, and it's in a classroom environment. Day 2 is the fun day. We put you on a bus, and we go around Melbourne and we educate you on the best suburbs to buy into and the worst suburbs and areas you should avoid unless you want to get 3% growth. For those who are interested, just scroll below, click the link below and register yourself, or just go to this URL and register yourself. The events are complimentary, they are free, and there is nothing you can buy at these events, just so you know. I only run a few of these per year, but they do book out very quickly. So Hope to see you at one of these events and come up and say hello. Also, for those of you who like reading, and I can tell you now the difference between you right now and 5 years from now is the books that you read and the people that you interact with. That's going to be the difference. This is a great book on finance. You can check it out at Amazon or bookonfinance.com.au or any good bookshop out there. There's not many bookshops left anymore, but there are a few, and they do have my book. Also, I want to give you a free gift. For those who can't make it to the event, this is a recording of the event from a few years ago, which is, you can access that online. It's valued at $497. It's my gift to you, absolutely free, no strings attached. By the way, when you register for this, we're never going to call you up or try to sell you anything. It's free information and there is no strings attached. People kind of almost expect to be called, or we don't have a call center. I don't have anyone in my office that can call you. So we only take calls coming inbound, not outbound. Very simple to use. You basically click on these videos. There's about 10 to 12 hours of content, and I've just upgraded the finance section with 3 more hours because of the recent royal inquiry into the banking system. So I managed to get Stephen McCludge, excuse me, to do a new 3-hour session on just purely on finance. So it's pretty much up to date. You can just access this immediately right now, and it's free. How do you access it? Just go down, there's a link below under this video, or if you can read this, you just type in that URL and you can access that information for free and start educating yourself and make those informed decisions. And the reason I do these videos, guys, because even if I never meet you, I want you to become successful. I want you guys to become investors. I want you to become part of the 1% club that does, because does have people that actually buy more than 5 properties, and this is the reason why I'm doing these videos. Some of the information that I cover, I think sometimes people might think that I'm a bit coarse or direct, or maybe I talk about things that people are not prepared to listen to, or some of the information might be non-congruent with your current belief system. But I can tell you now, most of this stuff is real. I'm a real investor. I know a lot of investors. I can tell you now, they do the exact opposite of what everyone's doing. And that's what's really working. And that's what I recommend that you guys start doing as well. Thank you very much. This is Konrad Bobilak, and I'll see you guys on the inside.